Welcome to Challenging the Norm, his and hers look at life and business, hosted by Paul Snell and Lindsay Burden. This podcast is designed for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and business owners redefining success on their terms. Each episode dives into the topics that truly matter, offering a blend of candid discussion, practical insights, all delivered with a sense of humour. We reality check the latest business trends while offering a fresh perspective that challenges conventional thinking. Paul partners with business leaders, leveraging cutting-edge neuroscience to demonstrate how people-centered strategies drive transformational success. While Lindsay brings her unique approach to business coaching, empowering ambitious business owners to achieve financial abundance and a lifestyle rich in time and joy, all without compromising what matters most. Together, we are challenging the norm. So grab a coffee or your beverage of choice and join us as we explore the art of creating a life and business you love.
Hi, Lindsay. Another episode, another great subject. In fact, it's a follow-on from the last one. I don't think we've ever done a podcast or where there's multiple episodes. So this is quite exciting. How are you today?
I'm really good. The sun is shining. And I think this is a follow-on from the last one, which was a follow-on from the one before that. So this is like a trilogy.
How about that? We've progressed to trilogies.
I know.
I think that's worth saying in any language. Yes, so we're going to follow on from the last episode, and we're going to focus in this one. Although there's clear links, we're going to focus on this episode around the idea that being a business owner isn't for everyone. Right? I think I want to say about this episode before we start that, we're going to be fairly fair with our views on this. We have good views, we have strong views on it, but we're not going to sit here and beat away at that you've got to do it in any particular way. We're going to give views on why we think it's important for people to look at things slightly differently at times, and also to be fairly pragmatic and go in with their eyes open. Would you say?
Yeah, I would. And I think it came out of last time we were talking about resilience, that, success doesn't happen overnight. You do need to work at it. There is no quick 10 steps to being a multimillionaire by a week last Tuesday. You have to put the work in. And we were talking about how actually, if you are, I'll use my standard example, if you're a mum with young children or children at teenage age, are teenagers, there is this, piece around, certainly for me anyway, that we don't always have the 24 hours. And I'm sure I mentioned that 24 hours, we all have the same. No, we don't. So for me, it came from that piece. And it was after we finished recording and we were chatting and we both agreed that being a business owner isn't for everybody, for many of those reasons that I've just mentioned, really. So it takes resilience, it's going to be hard work. And I think sometimes, and I have certainly met a few people who have gone, right, I want the flexibility. I want to be able to grow my own business. I want to do my own thing. I want to be able to pick the kids up from school or whatever it is that you need to do. And then I've got to that point where the business foundations are there, it feels good, but they haven't replaced their income. And you are not, there's one particular example I'm thinking of, they were not going to have replaced their income in the 12 months that they had given it. And I think that starts to look at, I'm sure we've done an episode on how long does it take? Well, it will take as long as it takes, depending on your circumstances, the number of hours you've got. And there is that thing, isn't it? If you give up, what was round the corner?
Yeah.
But I think for me, I want people to know that if you've tried, or if right now you are trying and it feels really hard and, really worrying you, and you're not sleeping because you're worried about paying the bills, it's not that you have failed, and it's just that it's not for everybody. Let's be really honest, Paul. This life is tough and it is not for everybody.
It really isn't. And I also want to say that, I see an awful lot, and you're going to get me bang on about social media again, which people must hear me talk about endlessly on this podcast. But I've seen a lot of, I don't know what you call them, posts, I guess,
Yeah.
on social media explaining how if you live to the average age, you're only going to have 11 years after you've worked for the best part of 40 years to retire. And I go, that's really unfair. That
Mm.
is really unfair because that infers that that work time you had wasn't good. You were under the thumb. It was horrible. And here you are finally getting your release and you only have 11 years. I don't think that's fair. In fact, more than that, I think that's pretty damned awful because for a lot of people, jobs are what they enjoy.
Yeah.
It's perfectly okay. I know so many people who love what they do. And let's be honest about this, Lindsay. I think the stress behind having a business is just as at the same level as having a job. I have to be honest. If anyone says to me, "Oh, I want an easier life," don't start a business.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Equally, I'm not saying don't start a business. I'm saying just be clear, right? It's not for everyone. And if it's not for you, that's perfectly all right. I don't think you need to sit there and go, oh yeah, but I've seen all these messages where they tell me that if I've got to be careful because I might only have a few years after I retire. Sorry, if that were true, we'd all have businesses. If that were true, life wouldn't have any stress in it. The reality here is this. Some people love their job and they have done the same job, rarely in the same company these days, but the same job for all their career, and they have finished it and loved every moment of that. And that's all right.
I think there is, I want to talk about this retirement piece as well, because you and I talk about retiring often. I mean, in theory, in 10 years' time, we could put our feet up. And we have both had that conversation around, well, actually, we're not sure that we want to put our feet up. Things change, things happen, we don't know. But you and I both love what we do. But I think there is this little thing here for me that whether you have a job or whether you are in business, if either of those two things are causing you such stress and anxiety, and have taken you to that place of burnout, we're not here to wait for our retirement to live
No.
our best lives.
Yep.
Please do not wait. We all know people who retired and then sadly left this earth. So, whether you are in a job or you have a business, we need those things to enable us to live a really great life here and now. And I would suggest, having been with my friends this weekend, my life is very different from those who have jobs, who can book time off, who have however many days holiday and all of those things. So I did think at one point, God, having a job is great, isn't it? Because there's a lot of benefits to that. So I think we need to be really careful when considering going into business because you want greater flexibility, because you want to be in charge of your own time. In many respects, when you certainly start a business, your time is going to shrink for a period.
Mhm.
I would suggest. And again, it will depend on your circumstances, how quickly you want to make it, and all of those things. So, my message today would be whether you've got a job or a business, please don't wait for retirement.
No, I would agree, and I think it's also this is linked a wee bit here. I think the definition of retirement is outdated.
Oh,
We are fitter, healthier, mentally more aware for longer than we've ever been. And so I think the idea, there's a lot of research done. The research seems to indicate that if we take retirement as a point where we just sit in a sofa from that point on watching TV, that is not a healthy outcome. However, if we see retirement as an opportunity to have more a choice of what we do with our time, but have that time as a productive period, I think that's a whole different ball game. I spent the weekend, not the whole weekend, of course. I met a new neighbour who's a retired vicar, and he's lovely. Peter is his name. And he was lovely, and he's retired from the church, but now keeps himself very busy. He does district council, and he does other voluntary work around the local youth groups. Nothing, nothing outrageous, but enough so that there is no chance for that slowdown to creep up on him, and then change our mindset completely. That's where I think the challenge is. So I see retirement as no longer something that goes, you're earning money, then you stop earning money because you now have a pension. I think that's outdated.
Yeah.
I think we need to be careful that what retirement really means. I know many people that have worked into their 70s. They work part-time, and they choose to because they know they're healthy enough, fit enough, mentally well enough to do this. And so I'm not convinced we should see retirement as a point that you can go, oh, I've retired, so I must be happy.
Okay, so if it's not a point in time, although my eyes did light up slightly when you said there is a point where you can just sit on the sofa, I have got a lot going on at the moment. Sitting on the sofa and doing nothing and watching a Netflix box set feels like something I'd like to do. But that aside, I don't know if anyone noticed, but my eyes did go. Okay, what we're saying here is that retirement is not a point in time and that it has changed.
Yes.
So I want to put something into the mix here. You could say that somebody who starts a business to create a little bit more flexibility so they can be there. And I'm sorry to keep banging on and using the children one. It just happens to be a really easy example. So they can be there to drop their children off and pick their children up. You are wanting to create a business that works around your life. And, I know you might not be 67 and you might not be at retirement age, but what you're doing is you're creating the lifestyle that you want. So that is the key for me here, whether you start a business or are employed. It must enable you to have that lifestyle. And I think when you go into business, that if you go to social media, there is a version of it that says you can be sitting on the beach making sales. You can be sitting on the beach doing the work and all the stuff and having a great time and abseiling at 3 p.m. and cocktails by 7. I've made that up, people. I have never seen that in a post. But it's really important that, and I think that's something to really worth thinking about. And I'm sure we've covered this before. If you're going to go into business, what is that why? And we definitely talked about why before. And if it's that you want to have a lifestyle that's different, recognize that you may not have that lifestyle immediately, or you may have that lifestyle, but your income may not match the job that you have left.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the challenges for people when they start a business is they expect the income to happen. They expect the return to happen, and it does not happen overnight.
I think that's a huge point, and well segued into that point. I think that's a really, really, in fact, that's core for me. Over many, many years of working with people who start out in business, particularly coaches, the first question isn't how can I coach for a living? It's how much can I earn and how quick can that be? And I understand why, by the way. Rarely have I found anyone who's doing that because of greed. They're doing that because what they recognize is to do the thing they love every day, they're going to need to earn an income. And if they're going to do that full time, the income needs to pay the bills and a bit more.
Yeah.
Now, it also, in all my years of experience, I've never known that happen overnight. I've never known that happen in 6 months. I've never known someone to replace and if you've got a decent career, I don't know, 50K a year, I've never known anyone replace that in a year. And I think that there's pragmatism in there. One of the things you and I touched on in the last episode is people all too often feel they failed if they have to go back and get some employment to pay the bills. And I think we need to dispel that. There
Yeah.
is no failure in doing that. And I say this to all the people that I get involved with, your life is way more important than the feeling that you may have failed because you need to go and find income from somewhere else. Do not end up in a place where that hounds you emotionally.
Yeah.
Go and get some more work. If you need to supply some income just to keep you going the way you're going, keep your head above water so you can focus on developing your business, do it. Because the one thing I can tell you, your financial woes will always outfocus anything else. So when someone says, "Oh yeah, but you've got to focus on your marketing and your selling and so forth," if you've got financial struggles, you won't focus on those.
No. And actually, when you're coming at it from a place of lack, you won't sell anything
No,
anyway.
no,
I agree with you, and it's quite interesting because I've done interviews before, and they always say, "What's the best piece of advice you were ever given?" And that was to give up my job
yeah,
because I could focus on my business. However, I got redundancy.
yeah,
I had that financial buffer
yeah.
to be able to give this a good go. It was in a period of my life when actually I could give it a go because I think that's the other challenge. Really, it does depend on where you are in life and what your responsibilities are. Now, I was still the main breadwinner and I still had, small children, but it was the right time. Everything aligned beautifully. And, was very fortunate that I never had to use that redundancy. I've probably since used it for holidays. Because I can assure you, it ain't there now. And that's because, and I'm joking here, and it ain't there now, but that's because other things come, your kids get older, other things come along. So you will always need that buffer. So if you, please, if you are in business, start creating that buffer. Have more than one bank account. So you are putting away money to pay your tax and you are putting money away. That is your buffer, 3 to 6 months running costs. Now, if you're a solopreneur, those running costs need to run your business and they need to run your home, they need to run your life.
Yeah.
And that brings us back neatly. If you're getting anxious or concerned about those things, it is okay to go. And I know lots of business owners that go, "Oh, actually, this opportunity came up. It was too good to turn down, and I'm taking 3 months off the business." Or this opportunity came up, and it's 2 days a week, and it's really just taking the pressure off. Lots of business owners do it, but what we don't hear them talking about it. So then it makes it something that is taboo to do.
Yeah. That needs to be dispelled. There can be no stigma around this. It's so fundamentally important. You make another point, and some of this stuff, it just is what it is, right? But some things do need to align for you. Timing does need to be right. There needs to be circumstances that you go, that will allow me to do X, or that will give me the opportunity to do Y. There needs to be some of that, right? The same way as the point you make about open up a bank account, put money away. You all too often I hear people go, "Well, you know what? Last week I decided that's it. I'm going to go and do coaching or whatever it happens to be." Without any planning involved. I don't mean business planning. Business planning, oh, I'm going to get shot to pieces for this. That's not too difficult. There is a process to follow, right? But life planning is more critical.
Yes.
So to be able to sit there and say, right, I'm going to plan this out. I really would like to do I don't know, psychotherapy or physiotherapy, you pick it, some form of service business. I would really like to do that. So what do I need to have in place to make that a reality? Not the business itself, planning wise. You can do that another time. This is about life. What do I need? Finances will be top of the list. Time will be there. Have I got the time and the flexibility to do this? For whatever I choose, do I have what's necessary to allow me, and you describe that, to have that full and complete attention and give it a go at the right time to see if you can make it work?
Yeah.
I just feel that's so critical in this.
And I would add some pieces to that. One of the first coaches I ever worked with, She had sort of this document that you used to have to follow, and it there was a part of me that was quite resistant to it because I was like, oh, I don't need it. I don't need childcare. What's this thing about childcare? Well, my husband and I are splitting it, so we'll be fine. But actually, it was all the pieces showing to if your childcare falls through, what's the backup?
Yeah.
If you're working from home and your internet goes down, what's the backup?
Yeah.
And she went through this whole thing, and actually, it really made me step back and go, okay, where is my support? So, from a family point of view, what's my support? Where is it? What's going to happen? If I have to run to the school because one of the kids is ill, what does that mean to the business? And although at the time I was quite resistant to some of it because I didn't tell people I had kids. If you met me in the early days and didn't know me, I did not mention my kids.
Yeah.
As I thought you would think I wouldn't be able to do the work, that I would always be running off because the kids would be ill and all of those things. So I didn't tell anybody. But actually, once I'd got through my resistance and off my own high horse, looked at it and I was like, hang on a minute. If I can see the benefit to answering these questions from a business perspective, when the internet goes down, when the printer breaks, I don't think the printer was on there, but when your laptop stops working, who do I go to? Where is my support mechanism? Then I could step back and go, okay, so in the home, around my children, what does that look like? And I think that's a really interesting exercise to do if you're going to be at the beginning of that journey, particularly if you have other responsibilities beyond yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I I want to be able to define this really clearly, but I think it's more basic than that. I just feel very strongly that life is so important, and I mean everything that makes life is so important that with all the will in the world, and again, risking being shot to pieces by people listening, your business is just a business. I don't mean to make it sound secondary or inferior. I don't mean that. What I do mean is ultimately, when you close your laptop, you go back and you sit with your family.
Mm,
It's not the other way round,
no.
although I've seen people do that as well. It is all about the fact that when you close your laptop, when it's been a tough time, because you will have tough days, we all do. You'll have brilliant days as well, but there will be tough days where you just need to close the laptop and go, I just can't think about that right now. And you go back and you sit down with your family, your kids, friends, whatever it might be. And that is so critical. It's critical for anyone developing a business. It's one or two things happen. Either it's incredibly isolating.
Yeah.
In other words, you spend all that time on your own with your own focus. It can be incredibly isolating. Or if you get that balance right, it's really, really empowering to be able to go, challenging day, but I've got friends, family, whatever it might be that I'm going to go off and do now. The gym, doesn't matter. Find the balance. Often in the past, people talk about work-life balance. I'm not a huge fan of the phrase. I'm much more a fan of the phrase work-life integration. There is so few black and white lines in this type of thing now. Work-life balance doesn't fit it any longer. It's work-life integration. How can I make sure that they're integrated, but one doesn't replace the other? Or the difference is so stark that I struggle to get refocused either way. That if you integrate that, where you have boundaries in place, so you know what can and can't be done. I know people who will send an automated reply on an email saying, look, I do check it all the time, but just in case there's a delay, blah, 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 right? So I think there's a whole bunch of things that can be done to protect yourself. One of them, right at the top, and I understand passion is the big driver. You've got to love what you want to do. I understand that. But it's a bit like I'd always tell people, if you just want to coach people, but you don't have a business, it's just a hobby. If you don't charge for it, it's just a hobby. So
Mm,
if you're going to need to have money coming in to be able to finance you doing what you love to do. And if that money is through business, great. And you will get there with a consistent effort. But if that income is via a second job for a short period of time, that's equally great. because it keeps you focused on what you need to focus on and not the panic over who's going to pay the bills.
I would like to not disagree with you. Not disagree with you. I'm not sure if that means I disagree. But you said, if you've had a bad day, close the laptop and you go back to family. And I would like to sort of put into the mix that actually your health, your well-being, your family,
Mm.
your everything that you do outside of the business is way more
Yeah.
important than your business.
Oh, yes.
And I agree with you. I don't like this phrase, work-life balance. And I don't agree because when anyone says it, it just makes me go, well, I don't think I've got that at all. I mean, I'm not convinced I had it when I was employed, and I'm like, I definitely don't have it now. But that's because I'm not convinced that we can have a totally
Yeah.
balanced life and business, life and work. I'd like to think that if you worked for a really good employer and you were, lacking that space, that balance, they would want to work with you to help you achieve that. But
Mm.
when you work for yourself, you have to make those decisions for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
When you have a business, you have to create that.
Mm.
And I think when we are passionate about what we do, to use that word, it's really easy for the balance to be very unstable. I'm not going to say it tips one way or the other. I think it's just unstable and it's like being on a seesaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I agree with you. I don't think there is a work-life balance. And in part, that's because we love what we do.
Mm.
So therefore, our businesses, I close the door and I go and talk to my husband about it. And
Yeah.
he's nothing to do with it. My kids will ask me questions. It is what we do. It is who we are.
Yeah.
But the key thing here and the key message is that you must find a way of putting your health, your well-being, your relationships, your financials, that has to be higher.
Yeah. I don't think there's any choice, honestly, and that's from both experience and from knowledge and understanding. But I do want to say this isn't when we're not saying here, look how tough it is to own and operate a business. That's not the point of this.
No.
The point of this is really to say that there are elements that it's okay to have other income, that it's okay if that means it takes another 6 months to generate the income you want to do. It all comes back to that life planning stuff.
Mm.
There is no stigma, there is no failure in even having a go at something, going, this is not happening quick enough, I'm going to have to go and get some income. That's okay, because at the very least you've gone, now I get more of a feel for how long this is going to take,
Yeah.
or now I can be more realistic.
And I don't think there's anything, well, no, I don't think that there is nothing wrong equally with giving it a really good go and coming out the other side and going, I'm not sure this is for me.
Yeah.
I think I prefer the stability of having a pay packet that arrives on the 25th of the
Yep.
month, knowing
Yep.
what's in the pay packet.
Mm.
There are lots of reasons why people decide it's not for them. And I've met plenty of people who have started on the journey and had some great fun with it and really enjoyed their, entrepreneurial journey and even made good income at it. And then still gone, actually, this great job opportunity's come
Yeah.
along
Yeah.
and I want to do it
Yeah.
because it's about choice.
It is. And again, I want to say, and it's all choice. You can choose. You're
Yes.
not, you know, I keep coming back to social media. I'm sounding like a boring person at times, but the reality is there's lots of messages that, oh, you go back to work after you've doing the thing you love to do. Come on. We're still going to come back to that same message that goes, life is life. Your business is your business. Don't mix the two in what's important and what's going to have the bigger meaningful impact going forward. It will always be your life.
Yeah. And I know people who, quite, I would say, quite high up in business, other people's businesses working. They go in because there's a problem. They go in, they sort it out. They have the most incredible time for 2, 3 years, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And that's because that suited them at that time.
Yeah.
And now they're gone. So, what I think what we're saying, I mean, I don't know where we are for time, but I think what we're saying is, do you know what?
It's done.
Just do what feels right.
Yeah.
And if it's giving it a go and deciding it's not for you, that's okay. If you're in your business and there are some financial pressures and that's causing you to lose sleep, go and get a part-time job for a little while. Just balance that out. If you can always come back to what's the balance in life,
Yeah.
and I don't think you can actually make a wrong decision. I was talking to someone recently who had been with a company for a very long time and just knew it was right. It was time for a change. They went and worked with somewhere and it wasn't what they expected. It wasn't what they liked. They didn't enjoy it. And they went, do you know what? This isn't for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and look for another job. But that's what it's all about.
It is. And in the same respect, by removing those stigmas that, failure and all of this, it means you can make a very relaxed decision about your passion and maybe turning it into a business. It doesn't need to be huge and scary. It just needs to be well thought through. And that's perfectly understandable. Part of that thinking through is the financial planning. How's that going to look? And if you're not sure, if you sit there going, well, I want to start a business, but I've no idea how much do I need to have and how long is it going to take, go and talk to someone.
Yeah.
And go and talk to someone who's been and done what you want to do and where you'd like to go. And just listen.
And I imagine, like me, you've spoken to many, many people who have come to you because they think they want to start a business. I've worked with some incredible people and I've said, do you know what? I've not even worked with them. It's just a conversation. And I think, one young person I work with, I said, do you know what? Your driver at the moment is you want a mortgage.
Yeah.
Go get yourself a job.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
on that ladder. Get that behind you. And they're young enough that they could have done anything. I've worked with other people that I've gone, some of the things that you're telling me about the reason you don't like your job or what you're doing and you're finding it challenging, that's going to be amplified when you get a business. So let's look at that. There are so many ways of looking at it. And I've spoken to so many people who I like to think that I've either encouraged to go and have a go
Yeah.
or gone, hold off, hold on to that thought. And for others, I've gone, you need to really think about this because you're going to be replacing like for like and working for yourself. It can be a lonely old journey.
Yeah, it can. It can. So you're right. Time wise, boy, does it fly when we have something to
Oh,
say. But at the end of the day, when I listen to what we've said so far, we just need to remove the stuff that people trying to make you feel guilty of
yeah.
getting a job, whatever it might be. We encourage you to go and push forward with your passion. If that means getting a business, if that means you sat down and looked at what the implications are for you in your life for doing that business, go for it. We're
Yeah.
not saying it's this terrible thing to start a business. We wouldn't have done it ourselves if it were. But what we are saying is go in with your eyes open and
Yes.
do it for you. Don't do it because someone else is saying you must do it because, or if you don't start a business, you get to this mystical retirement time and it's dreadful because you've only got a few years left. Don't listen to all of that. Do it because you want to do it. Do it
Yeah.
because you sat down and made sure that it can run with your life and that you can see how you could get there. Talk to people that have been there and done it because it will give you the greatest insight. And then you can sit down and decide, is this really for me?
Yeah, and I think the other thing around business is that you can do one thing and you might go, actually, this was my passion. This is what I'm really interested in. But actually, I'm really interested in that.
Mm.
Once you start on the journey, it is a wonderful journey and you get to meet some
Yes.
incredible people and do some incredible things. So we're definitely not saying don't do it,
Don't.
but for all really think about it. And yeah, I like you. Go and talk to someone. Really do that. And that's someone, which I think we said in the last one, shouldn't really be a family member, your dog, or any other pets are available. It needs to be somebody who's walked your path or walked the path that you want to start taking.
Yes, exactly. How perfectly finished off. Yes, so Lindsay, great episode. Goes so quick. I can't believe it.
I
Um,
think there's a fourth episode. I've got a
well,
fourth one playing in my head.
how about that? Not only are we doing a trilogy, I don't even know what a four-part thing
That's why
is.
I said I've got a fourth one in my head because I don't know what it is.
We're turning into an episodes of Friends here. 10 years' time, we'll have done 100 episodes. How about that?
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll do number 4, and I shall wait with bated breath for that because we've never been to 4 things on the same
Yeah.
subject. But in the meantime, Lindsay, have a wonderful week, and we'll catch up on the next episode.
Take care.